The stars burned cold and bright against the endless dark, and beneath their silent gaze, a world was dying. Petra 7 had once been a peaceful mining colony, families carving out a life among crimson mountains and shimmering crystal caverns. Now it was nothing but smoke and ruin. The cities were gone. The people were gone. All that remained was drifting ash and the stench of fire. From the bridge of his immense warship, Commander Vexar looked down and felt only satisfaction. This was what the Krell did best. They came, they conquered. They moved on, never looking back. The Ravager's fang hung in orbit like a satiated predator, its hull still glowing faintly from the bombardment. 14 smaller escorts formed a tight defensive ring around it, their weapons still radiating heat from the destruction they'd unleashed. The Krell had perfected this craft over 300 cycles. They knew exactly how much firepower shattered a planetary defense grid, and exactly how long it took before survivors stopped fighting and started begging. Not that mercy ever came. The Krell had no word for mercy. They believed only in strength, domination, the right of the powerful to take from the weak whatever they desired. Vexar's scaled claws gripped the armrests of his command throne as his amber eyes swept across the tactical displays. His second officer approached with deliberate caution. Everyone on the bridge knew how dangerous the commander could be when his blood still sang after a victory. The subordinate's spines flattened in submission as he spoke through his translator device. "All resistance on the surface has ceased, Commander. The remaining survivors request terms of surrender." Vexar's mandibles clicked together in a harsh sound that passed for Krell laughter. "There are no terms. There will be no survivors. Finish the bombardment and prepare to move on. Intelligence reports a trade station 3 jumps away, one that will supply and amuse us." The officer bowed low and hurried to carry out the order. Around the bridge, the crew moved with mechanical precision born of repetition. They had done this countless times: target a world, crush its defenses, erase resistance, and strip away whatever resources remained. It was the foundation of the Krell Dominion, and it had served them well since before most other species had even reached the stars. Vexar allowed himself a rare moment of pride. For 60 cycles, he had commanded the Ravager's fang, claiming 47 worlds for the Dominion. His name was spoken across Krellis with reverence and fear. He had earned the right to choose his own conquests, to lead his own battle group. Fear, he mused, was a weapon more potent than any plasma cannon, and the Krell wielded it to perfection. Suddenly, the sensor officer stiffened. His spines rose in alarm. "Commander, new contact on long-range scanners. Single vessel entering the system at high velocity. Configuration unknown. No match for any species in our database." Vexar's eyes snapped toward the main display, where a new symbol blinked into existence at the system's edge. The ship had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel and was accelerating straight toward them, small, alone. Yet its approach stirred an unease he couldn't quite name. No one approached. A Krell fleet alone, unless they were suicidal, or utterly confident. Neither possibility made sense. "Get me a full scan," he ordered. "I want its origin, its armament, and any identification signals. A cow?" Sensor crew worked rapidly while the others watched the mysterious contact with a mix of curiosity and contempt. The Krell had fought dozens of species over their long history of conquest, and none had ever been a true threat. Some died bravely, others died begging, but all died. "Commander," the sensor officer called out, "the vessel is broadcasting on open channels. Common trade language. Attempting communication." "Put it through," Vexar growled. "Let's hear this fool before we vaporize his ship." The bridge speakers crackled. A voice filled the command center, speaking the trade tongue with an unfamiliar accent. Calm, controlled. But beneath the composure, there was a weight that made Vexar's scales prickle. "Krell vessel Ravager's Fang. This is Captain Jack Morrison of the Earth Defense Force warship Valiant. You are ordered to cease all hostilities against Petra 7 and surrender your vessel immediately. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. This is your only warning. I suggest you comply." Silence gripped the bridge. Every Krell officer froze, staring in disbelief. Then, slowly, Very slowly, Commander Vexar began to laugh. The sound rolled out of him like distant thunder. A harsh, rattling sound rolled through the command center, echoing off armored plates. One by one, the officers joined in until the bridge thrummed with Krell amusement. Earth. They had heard of Earth, the upstart world. The primitives who had only cracked faster-than-light travel a century ago. A species so new and fragile, the Dominion hadn't even bothered to mark them on the target roster. Vexar rose from his throne and signaled for silence. Immediately, the bridge fell still. Every pair of spines lowered in deference as they waited for their commander. "Open a return channel," he ordered. "I want to see the face of the fool who thinks he can order the Krell Dominion to surrender." The view screen flickered and resolved to show the human bridge. Captain Jack Morrison stood square in the center of the feed, and Vexar inspected him like a predator appraising prey. The human was smaller than a Krell warrior, no scales, no natural weapons, soft-skinned and seemingly fragile. Yet his gaze was steel. His eyes met Vexar's without a flicker of fear. Around him, human crewmen manned their stations with focused, efficient purpose. Their uniforms were shades of dark blue and gray, and each face carried that same hard look of veterans who had seen combat and survived. "Human captain," Vexar intoned, voice dripping contempt. "Do you comprehend what you have done? You have flown a single vessel into the heart of a Krell battle group and demanded our surrender. Does your language even have a word for suicide? Or are you simply ignorant of how the galaxy operates?" Morrison's expression did not change. "We have many words, Commander. Suicide is one of them, but the one you should worry about is justice. You just murdered 50,000 innocents on Petra 7, farmers, miners, teachers, children. People who never harmed you. You slaughtered them without a second thought." Vexar's mandibles parted in what might have been a smile. "They were weak, and we are strong. That is the law of the stars. Turn your ship and flee while you can. I am feeling merciful. Leave now, and I will let you live. Stay, and I will add your wreckage to Petra 7's orbit and teach your kind the consequences of defiance." Silence held again. Morrison's face shifted in a way Vexar could not read. When the captain spoke, his voice was colder than empty space. "You're wrong about one thing, Commander. We're not here to challenge you. We're here to end you. When we're finished, every species in this galaxy will know the Krell's reign is over. Humanity keeps its promises. We promised Petra 7 protection, and we keep our word." The transmission cut abruptly. The view screen went black. Vexar stared at the void for several long seconds, then turned to his tactical officer with a voice like grinding metal. "Battle stations. All ships. Combat readiness. Launch fighters. I want that human ship turned to atoms." On the Valiant, Captain Morrison watched the tactical hologram as the Krell formation tightened into an assault posture. His crew moved with the calm efficiency that only months of training and years of hard experience could buy. Each of them had volunteered for this mission fully aware of the stakes. Earth had only been part of the galactic community for a century, but in that time humanity had learned brutal truths. Predators lurked between the stars, and survival demanded the will to strike back. Lieutenant Amy Rogers at Tactical skimmed the incoming data, her fingers dancing over the console. She had short red hair and green eyes that never strayed from her displays. "Sir, I'm reading 15 Krell warships, including the flagship. Escorts are converging for a surround. Their main weapon is charging. Energy signatures match their plasma bombardment systems." Morrison nodded, keeping his face composed even as his pulse hammered. He had studied every dossier Earth had on the Krell. He knew what those weapons could do. The Krell had melted continents, boiled seas, and left worlds as dead stones. But Valiant was not a typical prey craft. She was a product of human engineering and stubborn resolve, and she carried systems that would surprise anyone who underestimated humanity. "Helm, take us to attack speed. Keep us moving. Don't give them a static target. Tactical, shields at maximum. Point defense hot. When they fire, I want interceptors on every inbound." The helmsman, Kevin Grant, a former fighter pilot turned capital ship officer, threw the Valiant into a sudden surge of acceleration that belied her bulk. Human vessels favored fusion drives and reaction control over exotic anti-grav engineering, and that difference made them unexpectedly nimble. Danny Price at comms was tight-faced with controlled fury. "Captain, final transmissions from Petra 7 before the jamming began. Evac ships tried to lift, and the Krell shot everyone down. No survivors." Morrison's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "Record everything, Danny. When this is over, the galaxy will see what the Krell are. We'll show them what happens when you push humanity too far." Across the void, the Krell fleet arrayed itself in the practiced formation of countless conquests, massive, angular hulls bristling with weaponry designed to cow the eyes as well as the spirit. Psychological terror was as much a weapon. "Has destroyed over 1,000 worlds and defeated every species we have encountered. You cannot win this battle. Save yourself and your crew. Leave now, and I will allow you to carry word back to your home world about the power of the Krell Dominion." Morrison inhaled slowly, then spoke with cold clarity. "Commander Vexar, remember this. You asked if humans have a word for suicide. We do. But we also have a word for what happens when you threaten innocence in front of a human warship. We call it a very bad decision on your part. Valiant out." He cut the channel and looked to Amy. "Tactical, give me a firing solution on the nearest escort. I want to send a message before the main engagement." "Show them we didn't come here to flee." Amy's fingers flew. "Solution locked, Captain." "Forward railgun charged. Range optimal." Morrison took one last glance at the tactical map. The Krell treated this like an execution, not a fight. That was their mistake. "Fire!" The Valiant's forward railgun spat a projectile with a magnetic shriek that registered across the system. The round was a 3-ton tungsten dart accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. It crossed the gap to the nearest escort in under 2 seconds. The escort's energy shields flared in a desperate attempt to stop it, but they were tuned for beams and bolts, not blunt kinetic fury. The rod punched through like a ghost. Where it struck, metal vaporized into plasma. Atmosphere boiled away. Cascading secondary detonations shredded the rest of the bow. In less than 5 seconds, the escort was gone. Only debris and an expanding cloud of gas remained. Cheers erupted on the Valiant, but Morrison lifted a hand to hush them. "One down! 14 to go. Don't celebrate. They'll throw everything at us now. To helm, evasive pattern Delta. Tactical, prepare for multi-vector engagement. Point defense, stand ready. They'll return fire." On the Krell flagship, Vexar stared at his tactical feed in stunned silence. One escort simply vanished, annihilated by a single shot from a single weapon. Fear moved like a cold current through his officers. They had never witnessed such raw, kinetic impact. "All ships, open fire! Target the human vessel. Do not stop until it is ashes. Launch fighters, we swarm them." The Krell answered with everything: plasma banks, missile volleys, laser arrays. The void between the fleets blossomed into a violent nova as hundreds of weapons discharged simultaneously, enough force to level cities to fracture moons. It was meant to overwhelm, but the Valiant was ready. Amy's voice stayed steady. "Incoming, multiple vectors. Point defense engaging. Countermeasures deployed. Human defenses came alive with practice speed. Automated laser turrets tracked and severed incoming plasma bolts. Electronic countermeasures scrambled missile guidance. The few strikes that made contact struck shields engineered beyond Krell expectations. Human scientists had taken the common shield archetypes and refined them. More efficient, tougher, able to absorb both energy and high-velocity impacts. The Valiant shuddered as several plasma bolts punched through, lights flickering as power rerouted, but the shields held. Shields at 87%. No hull breaches. All systems nominal. Morrison allowed himself a short, controlled smile. "Return fire! All forward batteries. Show them Earth engineering." The Valiant replied with thunder, rail guns launching their kinetic spears, laser batteries carving precise channels through space, and missile pods loosing guided warheads. Human weapons were different, surgical, brutal, built by a people forged in near-constant conflict. They knew how to break things and how to do it efficiently. Another Krell escort detonated as a rail round punched its reactor. A third lost propulsion to a missile strike and went into a tumbling death spiral. The Valiant moved like a war dancer, rolling and weaving to complicate targeting while her weapons found new marks. Kevin at the helm grinned despite the heat of battle. "She handles like a dream, Captain. These Krell hulls are so slow they can't keep our tracking lock. Keep us moving. Watch for fighters. They'll try to swarm." True to form, Krell fighters streamed out, small, fast, designed to overwhelm with numbers. But the Valiant's point defense had been built for exactly that threat. Automated turrets tracked dozens of targets and opened fire with ruthless accuracy. The attacking fighters burned away one after another. Fighter screen, 60% losses. "Survivors breaking off," Amy reported. "I think we scared them." "Good. Focus on the escorts. Clear the field before we take on the flagship." "That one will be dangerous." The fight raged on. The Krell were learning, brutally and clearly, that being the largest predator in the hunting ground meant little when your quarry moved. Unlike anything you had encountered before, they had met something, with better weapons and smarter tactics. The Ravagers' fang lunged toward the human ship, and every battery along its hulking flanks began to flare as capacitors charged. Commander Vexar remained rigid at his station, watching the neat order of his fleet unravel. 6 escorts were gone. 3 more limped with catastrophic damage. The human vessel moved through space with an agility he had never seen, fast, precise, lethal. Each shot found its mark. Every maneuver improved its angle of attack. This was not how the Krell expected a fight to unfold. They won by weight of numbers and crushing force. Numbers meant nothing when half your battle group was smoking wreckage. Charge the primary cannon. "All power to forward shields," Vexar barked. "Destroy that human ship. Now!" His crew obeyed with frantic efficiency, their motions betraying fear. They had expected an easy harvest, another primitive world to break and plunder. Instead, they found a foe who refused to die quietly. On the flagship, the primary weapon's capacitors sang as energy pooled in monstrous banks, the same superweapon that had vaporized continents and cleaved through dreadnought hulls. It should have been enough to erase a single human cruiser. Alarms flared on the Valiant. Amy's voice sliced through the din. "Sir, the flagship is charging a massive energy signature." "It's their world killer beam. If that hits, our shields won't hold." Options flickered through Morrison's mind. You can't outrun a beam that moves at light speed. You can't take it directly and survive. Time to improvise. "Helm, rotate the ship 90 degrees on my mark. Present our narrowest profile. Tactical, shift all shield matrix to the forward arc. Engineering, dump every available watt into shields. Reactors, full output." Kevin's hands danced over the controls. "Ready to rotate on your order, sir." "Amy, status?" Morrison demanded. "We're burning everything into the forward shield. Even then, we'll have maybe 30 seconds at max before reactors overheat." 30 seconds is all I need," Morrison said. "Keep the shields up. Give me the shot." The Krell weapon finished its charge and unleashed a searing lance of purple energy. It slammed into the Valiant's forward shields with a soundless violence that made the human ship shudder. Defensive systems flared brilliant blue as they strained to absorb and bleed off the deluge. Inside the hull, lights dropped to emergency and heat warnings screamed as thermal loads bled through protective layers. Crew gripped consoles while the shield integrity meter slid down, 90, 80, 70%. This was not a skirmish test. It was a weapon forged for annihilation, all directed at them. "Tactical, do we have a firing solution on their flagship?" Morrison rasped. Amy's hands flew over her console. Systems flickered under duress. "Solution locked, Captain. Main gun needs 10 more seconds to spool. Hold the line for 10 seconds. Helm, stop rotating. Engineering, keep that flow steady." The shields ticked down, 60, 50%. Alarms shrilled about imminent overload. Morrison could smell scorched circuitry and could imagine the fires fighting to consume sections of the ship. Damage control teams worked miracles to keep things alive. On the Ravager's fang, Vexar watched the human vessel buckle under the World Killer's beam and allowed himself a brief, savage satisfaction. This was Krell dominance, the inevitable crushing of an inferior craft. The Valiant writhed like an insect in amber. Its shields were failing. Victory lay within reach. Then everything changed. Human weapons, dimmed and seemingly suppressed, erupted in a single coordinated chorus. Railguns, lasers, and missile tubes all screamed to life and tore toward one precise point on the Ravagers' fang, the forward center where the flagship's shield matrix was thinnest because all available power sustained the main weapon. The first rail round struck and shattered the compromised shields like glass. Microseconds later, follow-up slugs punched through the exposed armor. Plate that should have withstood cathedral-level impacts ruptured and tore inward. Rounds found structural nodes and penetrated into the flagship's inner works. They cut straight to the ship's guts, seeking the massive generators that fed the main weapon. When the human rounds found those heart banks, the results were catastrophic. The Ravager's Fang's superweapon died in an instant as its power supply detonated. A chain reaction ripped through the forward sections. Decks burst into flame, bulkheads blew outward, and explosive decompression shredded corridors. In seconds, the flagship that had terrorized 1,000 worlds was gutted. Vexar was hurled across what remained of his bridge as the ship around him died. Consoles blew apart and armored plates collapsed. Screams, half swallowed by the vacuum, rang as crew were hurled into space or crushed by flying debris. He hauled himself up by a warped railing. Half the bridge was gone. The main view showed only stars where structure should have been. Emergency red lighting bathed the wreckage. "Damage report," he rasped. His second officer dragged himself over, one arm limp at his side. "Commander, forward sections 1 through 9, destroyed. Main power offline. Weapons dead. Life support failing. Hull breaches across multiple decks. The ship is—" Vexar cut him off, staring at the tactical feed that still flickered to life. The human ship was still out there. Its shields had held long enough. Around it, his fleet was in disarray, escorts limping away, others calling for terms. The mighty battle group that had conquered so many systems lay broken. On the Valiant, shields crept back up to 32% when the Krell beam collapsed. Morrison exhaled without realizing he'd been holding his breath. "Damage report," he said. Amy ran systems checks. Relief eased her features. Minor damage scattered through the ship. Shields regenerating. No critical systems down. "Captain, we did it. We survived their best shot and we hurt them badly." Morrison nodded, but did not allow celebration. Tactical status on the Krell fleet. Amy scanned. Flagship crippled. No power, no weapons. Dead in space. Remaining escorts scattering. Multiple hails coming in. Several are attempting to surrender. Silence fell. Krell's surrender was unheard of. They either fought to the end or slipped away to fight another day. Now they asked for mercy, the very mercy they had never granted Petra 7 or 100 other worlds. "Danny, what are they saying?" Morrison asked. Danny at comms looked up. "They're on open channels, Captain. Repeated requests for terms. Some are explicitly asking to power down." Morrison's mind flew over the burning images of Petra 7. The 50,000 voices cut short, the countless worlds erased by the Krell. Part of him wanted to wipe them all from the sky. Part of him knew what that would make him, and humanity. They had crossed the stars to stop monsters, not become them. "Open a channel to all Krell frequencies. Wideband. I want every Krell vessel to hear this." When the feed opened, Morrison's voice was hard and cold. "Attention, Krell forces. I will accept your surrender on strict terms. Immediately power down all weapons and shields. Transmit detailed locations of every Krell military installation in this sector. Provide full intelligence on planned operations and supply routes. You will also broadcast a message to every Krell warship in the galaxy. Tell them the Earth Defense Force has entered this war. Tell them that for every innocent life you take, we will make you pay. Tell them humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget. And tell them that if you ever threaten another peaceful world, we will hunt you, every single one, until the Krell are nothing but a bad memory." The channel was silent a long, heavy moment. Then slowly the Krell began to comply. Weapons powered down. Shields collapsed. One by one, their hulls lowered systems and ceased hostilities. They truly surrendered. Morrison watched with a mix of triumph and mourning. The battle had been won, but how many more would it take before the Krell's campaign of terror finally ended? News of Petra 7's defense raced through the galactic lanes. Within days, species across the arm heard the recordings, sensor logs, ship cams, tactical overlays that left no room for doubt. The Valiant had danced through Krell fire as if the odds were fiction. Its railguns had punched through seemingly impenetrable shields. The moment the Ravagers' fang died under precision, strikes played on loop in bars and markets and diplomacy halls from Harmony Point to the outer trade rings. Where merchants had once whispered about tribute, they now whispered of resistance. Captains who'd paid to avoid raids began to question why. Governments and admiralties asked themselves a dangerous question. If one human ship could do this, what might an entire human fleet accomplish? 3 days later, Captain Jack Morrison sat in his ready room and tried to process what they'd done. The Valiant still orbited Petra 7. Recovery teams had swept the surface. No survivors. The Krell had been thorough. The Valiant now floated with a captured Krell battle group and a responsibility Morrison had never sought. His door chimed. Lieutenant Amy Rogers entered, exhausted. So were they all. "Sir," she said, settling into a chair, "we pulled the Krell database. We've got full downloads, fleet lists, supply nodes, planned ops. It's more than we dared hope." Morrison gestured for the datapad. "What are we looking at for overall Krell strength?" Amy scrolled through the feeds and began to speak. The numbers painting the next chapter of a war they had only just begun. They commanded roughly 400 capital ships, divided into 20 battle groups, each led by a senior warlord like Vexar. Supporting them were an estimated 2,000 escorts and countless fighter wings. Total military personnel, around 15 million. Morrison let out a low whistle. "And Earth has what? 32 warships and maybe 50,000 fleet personnel? That's a 10-to-1 disadvantage." "Yes, sir," Amy said. "But there's something important in the data. The Krell have never faced coordinated resistance. Every species they've conquered either surrendered immediately or fought with obsolete weapons and poor strategy. They've grown complacent. They believe they're untouchable. What we did at Petra 7, that's never happened to them before. So we caught them off guard," Morrison said. "That won't happen twice. They'll adapt." "Probably," Amy agreed. "But here's the thing. Every species in this sector saw what happened. The Krell have terrorized these worlds for generations, and everyone believed they couldn't be beaten. We just shattered that illusion. If we can convince others to stand with us, to fight back together, then those odds start to look a lot better." Morrison leaned back in his chair, considering. A coalition, multiple species working together. It was logical, but it depended on the rarest resource in the galaxy: trust. Any word from other governments? Official channels? "Not yet," Amy replied. "Most are probably still trying to figure out what this means. But Danny's been monitoring open transmissions. People are talking. Some are hopeful, some terrified. No one knows what to make of humanity yet." Morrison nodded slowly. "Then we'd better make sure they understand who we are. We didn't come here just to fight the Krell. We came to show the galaxy that fear doesn't have to rule, that peaceful worlds have the right to exist without being conquered or destroyed." The door chimed, and Danny Price entered, clearly energized. "Captain, you need to see this. We're getting a transmission from the Galactic Council. They've called an emergency session and want to meet with Earth's representatives." Morrison and Amy exchanged glances. The Galactic Council, an ancient body of the sector's older civilizations, was the closest thing to interstellar governance. Its members prized sovereignty, rarely agreeing on anything, but when they did, the galaxy paid attention. "Do we know the agenda?" Morrison asked. Danny grinned. "Us, sir. They want to discuss humanity and what we did at Petra 7. Specifically, whether we plan to do it again." Morrison stood, straightening his uniform. "Get me a secure channel to Earth Command. They need to be briefed. Tell the Council Earth will send a representative. We'll explain our position." 3 weeks later, Ambassador Lisa Carter stood outside the Galactic Council chambers, steadying her breath. 15 years of diplomacy had taken her from the frontier colonies to high-stakes treaties, but this was different. Humanity's first appearance before the full council. Every word she spoke today would echo across the stars. At 38, she was young for an ambassador, but had earned her post through resolve and instinct. Her dark hair was tied back neatly, her Earth defense uniform spotless. Medals gleamed, earned during the early colony wars, when survival in space was a daily battle. Those years had tempered humanity for moments like this. The chamber doors parted with a resonant hum. Lisa stepped inside. The council hall was vast and circular, its tiers filled with envoys from over 60 species. The air shimmered with soft translation fields, and hundreds of eyes of every color, shape, and number watched her approach. Some curious, some hostile, many fearful. At the central dais stood the speaker, a tall figure of silver skin and 3 eyes that glowed faintly with inner light. His voice carried through the hall, calm but commanding. Ambassador Carter of Earth, you stand before this council to answer for the incident at Petra 7. Reports confirm that a human warship engaged and defeated a Krell battle group. The council seeks to understand humanity's intentions, and whether your people mean to involve themselves in this region's conflicts. Lisa met his gaze and spoke clearly, ensuring every translation matrix caught her tone. Honored speaker, members of the council, Earth thanks you for the opportunity to address this assembly. Yes, it is true. The Drexian's voice trembled as he spoke. We know the Krell's cruelty, Ambassador, but fighting them is suicide. They are too strong, too many. All you have done is provoke them. They will return with greater force and annihilate you, and perhaps others as well. Lisa met his sorrowful gaze. With respect, Representative, the Krell don't need a reason to destroy. That's what they are. That's what they've done for 300 cycles. They will keep doing it until someone stops them. The real question this council should be asking is not whether humanity was right to fight back, but why you haven't. The chamber erupted into chaos. Dozens of voices clashed in outrage and disbelief until the speaker called for silence. When the uproar faded, a Thexian delegate stood, his fur standing on end. And what would you have us do, Ambassador? Hurl our fleets into a war we cannot win? Sacrifice our worlds for a hopeless cause? The Krell are content with the Outer Rim. As long as we do not provoke them, they leave the core worlds in peace. Lisa's voice stayed calm, but there was fire beneath it. So you let them consume the outer worlds, hoping they won't come for you next. You sacrifice others to buy time and call it wisdom. But it's not wisdom, it's cowardice. The silence that followed was absolute. No one had ever spoken to the council like that. Lisa pressed on. 300 cycles ago, the Krell ruled 10 systems. Today, they rule over 300. In another 300 cycles, they'll rule 1,000, and one day they'll reach your core worlds, your precious inner systems. What will you do then? She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Humanity has only been part of this community for a century. We are young, and we've made our share of mistakes. But there is one lesson our history taught us well, what it means to fight for survival. We know what it costs. And we know that when evil threatens the innocent, good people must stand up and fight back, not because it's easy or because victory is certain, but because it's right. She gestured toward the holographic display above the chamber. The galactic arm appeared, a third of it glowing red with Krell territory. This is what they've taken. From all of us. Hundreds of worlds, trillions of lives. And what has this council done to stop them? You've held meetings, issued statements, offered sympathy. But you've never acted. You've never stood together and said, enough. The Drexian representative rose again, his expression weary but curious. You speak with passion, Ambassador. But passion doesn't win wars. The Krell have crushed empires older than your species. What makes you think humanity can succeed where others failed? Lisa activated another display, battle footage from Petra 7. The council watched in stunned silence as the Valiant tore through 15 Krell warships, outmaneuvering and outgunning them. They saw the human dreadnought take the flagship strike and fire back until the Krell commander surrendered. This, Lisa said quietly, is what makes us different. Our ships are smaller but faster. Our weapons rely on kinetic force your shields can't withstand. Our tactics are aggressive, unpredictable, born from centuries of fighting when hesitation meant extinction. The Krell have never faced an enemy like us. And at Petra 7, they learned that they can bleed. A new voice rose from the back of the hall. The Valoran delegate leaned forward. One battle, Ambassador. Impressive, yes, but one battle doesn't win a war. The Krell have 400 capital ships. Earth has 30. How can you possibly defeat them? Lisa had been waiting for that question. We can't. Not alone. That's why I'm here. She let her voice carry through the chamber. Earth is declaring war on the Krell Dominion. We will fight them with everything we have, but we aren't asking for your obedience or your pity. We're offering a choice. She looked around at the assembled faces, meeting every gaze she could. You can remain here in your safe stations, watching as humanity fights alone. You can count our ships, predict our defeat, and tell yourselves you were wise to stay neutral. And maybe you'll be right. Maybe we'll lose. But at least we will have tried. At least we will have stood for the principles this council claims to honor: justice, compassion, and the right of all beings to live free. Her voice rose, fierce and clear. Or you can join us, combine your fleets, share your strength, stand together as one. Show the Krell that the age of conquest is over. Alone, none of us can stop them. But together, we are more powerful than they could ever imagine. The chamber exploded with noise. Debates, arguments, translations shouting over one another. Some cheered, others denounced her as reckless. The speaker finally activated a suppression field, silencing the hall. The council will recess for 1 hour to deliberate, he announced. Ambassador Carter, remain available. Lisa bowed slightly and stepped away from the podium, her heart hammering. She'd said everything she could. Now it was up to them. In a quiet corridor, her communicator chimed. Captain Morrison's voice came through, rough but proud. Ambassador, whatever you said in there, people are listening. We're detecting chatter from multiple military channels. Fleets are mobilizing. I think you just started something. Lisa smiled faintly, exhaustion lining her voice. Let's hope it's something worth starting. When the council reconvened an hour later, the chamber was even more crowded. New delegates had arrived. Drawn by rumors of what had happened, the speaker rose. Ambassador Carter, after extensive debate, the council cannot compel its members to join your cause. Each government must decide for itself. But we can share the results of the preliminary votes. Lisa held her breath. The Valoran Union has voted to commit 12 warships to a joint coalition. The Drexian Empire will provide 8 plus logistical support. The Thexian Union offers 6 and access to their shipyards. The Mart Collective will contribute reconnaissance assets. In total, 17 species have agreed to form an alliance. A wave of relief washed through the room. 70 capital ships, still far fewer than the Krell's numbers, but enough to matter. Enough to believe. There is one condition, the speaker continued. Coalition forces require unified command. Someone who understands Krell tactics. Someone proven in battle. The Council recommends Captain Jack Morrison of Earth be given overall tactical command, with the provisional rank of Admiral. Lisa nodded, her voice steady. I'll relay your decision to Earth Command. But I can assure you he'll accept. Then it is decided, the speaker declared. The Galactic Coalition against Krell aggression is hereby formed. May unity guide us. 4 years later, the war was over. It had been brutal. Hundreds of ships lost, millions dead, but the coalition endured. More species joined as the tide turned. Humanity's technology and tactics reshaped galactic warfare. Slowly, the Krell were driven back, system by system, until their empire collapsed. The final battle was fought in their home system, 200 coalition ships led by Admiral Morrison himself. It was the largest battle in galactic history. When the smoke cleared, the Krell surrendered. Their war machine was dismantled. Their people confined to their homeworld under supervision. On the bridge of his new flagship, the Defender, Morrison stood in silence, watching the wreckage drift past. His old crew now commanded fleets of their own. Amy Rogers led a battle group. Kevin Grant trained new pilots. Danny Price managed coalition communications. Sir, his comm officer said softly, message from the Council. They're calling you back to Harmony Point for a ceremony. Morrison nodded. Set course. And get me Ambassador Carter, I owe her thanks. When the fleet arrived, crowds from 100 worlds filled the docks, cheering as the ships entered orbit. The ceremony was held in the Grand Plaza, attended by every member species of the coalition. Ambassador Carter presented Morrison with a medal, its surface engraved with the symbols of every allied world, and a phrase etched in 50 languages, "Defender of the innocent." "Admiral Morrison," the speaker said, "you have shown us that courage and unity can triumph over fear. You reminded us that together we are stronger, and you have given us something we had nearly forgotten: hope." Morrison accepted the medal quietly, thinking of the names etched in memory: Lieutenant Kim, Commander Lopez, and the thousands who would never see this day. When it was his turn to speak, he kept it simple.